Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and entrepreneurs with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing, while also documenting their own personal investing journeys, are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode for you. Today we had the pleasure of interviewing Kevin and Julia Windheuser. They are two real estate investors out of New England. They are currently house hacking and building their portfolio in Providence, Rhode Island. And they have a great story of just people that got inspired by listening to this podcast, Bigger Pockets, Real Estate Podcasts, Financial Independence, and decided to take action in their own life. And they actually put together their real estate portfolio during COVID when they were starting to work from home, had some flexibility. They have 6 units in 4 properties at the moment. They've rehabbed them all themselves and have just kind of moved from property to property, house hacking.
Live in, house hack, flip type stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. They have, like you said, 6 units, and this kind of sparked them when Kevin got fired from his job. And having these 6 units, or I think maybe they had 4 at the time, was allowing Kevin. Now, he still needed to go get another job, and he does now. He's an engineer. But him getting fired wasn't like this super big detriment to them. They were like, okay, we can reset. We can figure out exactly the job that I want to take that provides us the most flexibility, that we can still do our real estate portfolio. So this isn't a prime example of real estate coming to save the day by putting in that work. Now, they're making like, $5,000 a month in passive income, which is amazing, right? That's potentially enough to support you, but maybe not enough to support both of them, or they both, they still need to work, but they can be selective. And that is what real estate can provide. It's that not all full financial freedom, they're going to get there, but it's that financial, maybe like selectivity of, this is the way I want to live my life. And you said in the episode, building your job around your life versus building your life around your job. And that, to me, that's half the battle here. If you got to work and you got to do all this shit that you don't want to do, it's going to be hard to have the motivation to do the stuff you do want to do. And they kind of reverse engineered that. And all because of their hard efforts of rehabbing properties themselves. So they were cool. You could tell we vibed. We vibed because they've been listening to us for 4 years. And they were kind of like just
They felt like they knew us.
Yeah, excited to come on the show, and it's just so cool. Before we jump into the episode, I don't know I always forget to ask this. If you're listening to the show, we would really appreciate a 5-star review. We're at like 170 something on Apple. They really, really help us out. So if you've listened, if you haven't left a review, please do so. It helps us out. It helps us get more guests on the show, helps us climb in the algorithm and the rankings. And it just shows your support in a way for us providing free content. And we'll continue to do it. We're going to get better guests, better equipment, and kind of continue to grow this thing. But a review goes a long way.
It goes so far. And it, like, to his point, people look at when they're like, whose show do I want to go on? Or who do I want to interview on my show? Like, they'll look at our show and they'll be like, wow, there's 171 5-star reviews. There's 1 4-star and like 1 3-star.
Who's the 3?
Yeah, we'll find the 3-star. But I will say it very much helps, and it's anonymous. Like there's a little screen name, if you will, but it doesn't say your first and last name when you leave the review. So if you're worried about people knowing who you are, we're not going to know. But if you could leave the 5-star review and just write a little something. And I know it sounds so dumb, and you guys are like, God, you guys are annoying. Stop asking for that. You're begging for reviews. We put out a ton of free content, and we could use the help in that aspect. We're trying to get over 200 by the end of the year. So if you're listening to this and you've been debating it and you're like, dude, this is annoying, I don't want to do it, please just do it.
Yeah, just do it for your boys.
Just for your boys, please.
Thanks again. And without further ado, let's bring in our two, Julia and Kevin.
Let's do it. Having purchased investment properties as well as primary residences, we know how daunting it can be to find a reliable lender to secure financing for real estate in the market today. With the up and down of the market, high interest rates, and the complexity of the process, honestly, it can feel like a lot. So to help out our community, we decided to bring on probably the most important person or one of the most important members of our personal real estate investing team onto the show to help out our listeners. Our mortgage lender, Travis David of CMG Home Loans, has agreed to educate our community and assist anyone looking for real estate financing. Whether you're a real estate investor looking to fund your next project or simply looking to purchase a primary residence, Travis will be able to help you and point you in the right direction. So he provides each of his clients with a tailored roadmap designed to guide them through purchasing their first investment property and strategically scale their portfolios over time. So if you're looking to either purchase your first residence or maybe second residence, but a primary residence or invest in real estate, Travis is your guy. Visit our website at www.juice-enterprises.com/need-funding to book a call with Travis to explore all the loan packages that him and his team currently have available. He'll also help assess your current situation and will work with you to map out a plan for the future. So just remember this, we can all win. This is an example we really wanted to help out our community and something we find people are lacking in a daunting process. So if you are looking for real estate financing, we have your back. Make sure to visit our website and Travis will take care of you. Have you been struggling to close more real estate deals? Maybe you're a flipper, wholesaler, or simply looking to purchase a long-term rental property. Having done our fair share of investing in deals over the years, we've learned just how difficult it can be to find high-quality leads and motivated sellers that you can work with. To help solve the problem for us within our business, we hired a team of professionally trained cold callers at REI Call Center who make up to 2,000 calls for us per day. They not only nurture leads that come in, but they also add the leads directly to a CRM, which is known as a customer relationship management software, for us to manage so we can keep everything organized. To take it a step further, they also set us up with a dialer, weekly training calls, and a file vault of documents including scripts and contracts. So if you're looking to take your real estate business or investing portfolio to the next level, visit our Instagram page, our handles @weeklyjuicepod, and click on the link in our bio to book a free 15-minute discovery call with REI Call Center today. Kevin and Julia, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show. We were chatting a little bit pre-recording, and you guys are doing some pretty amazing things and super relatable to those looking to get into real estate investing and looking for financial freedom. So thanks for joining us. We're excited to share your story.
Thanks
for having us, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know I was saying it before, but it's been an honor listening to you guys. It's an honor to be here now today. You've given so much to us, so hopefully we can give your audience something a little back.
It's pretty cool to have people come on the show who have been listening for a while, so we appreciate it. And thanks for being persistent about coming on, too. I think we heard you on Bigger Pockets on the Rookie Show, and as soon as I heard you, I thought, okay, this is a really relatable story. A lot of people that are listening are going to understand this. I guess the place to start is, one, just give us some background on yourself, who you are, where you're from. But then specifically, you, Kevin, you had a corporate job that you lost. And because of some of the real estate investments that you had, this wasn't like a major disaster for you. And I just maybe start who you are, where you're from, and then that story, and we can jump into it.
Sure. I'll give myself and then let Julia tell her story. So I am your classic W-2 engineer, corporate job out of college, play it safe. I think a lot of people probably have that story. I know a lot of my friends do. And climbing the corporate ladder was always my vision. That's what I was kind of told. And it's a great vision. A lot of people really enjoy it and, climb up. But somewhere along the line, pretty early, probably only maybe 6 months to a year into my career, I was like, I can't see doing this forever. So quickly started listening to podcasts, quickly started picking up books, listening to you guys along the way. And I was like, real estate is super interesting. Got into a super small syndication at the time just to, put my, dip my toes in the water. And then, before we dive into the portfolio, I'll let Julia tell her story.
Sure. So at the time, I'm originally from New York, actually. So, little split house here when it comes to sports. But I was
not from New York, but split house. So don't you worry.
Philly, New England's pretty split.
Imagine that Super Bowl. That was brutal.
Yeah.
Especially for us, bro. Yeah, that's not great. Not great, dude. But all good.
Yeah, but I have to say, since I moved to New England, Tom Brady left, went to Florida and all of that. So downhill from there. But anyways, from New York, I started my career out there. I was a personal assistant to an attorney, but was also an account manager for pharmaceutical sales. And funny enough, he was flipping houses in the Poconos, and I got to listen to in on all his calls because I was his personal assistant. He was dealing with ordering cabinets and, he was listening to all the podcasts and all the audiobooks. And I really got like a secondhand education through him on how to, make a deal because he was the attorney on it. So that's why he was getting more of a percentage than his partners and all these kind of things because he was able to do closings and such. So I was really interested in it. And I was like, hey, like we got to figure out, how to get into this somehow. And then, so then I worked in tech and I was working remote like before COVID and before it was cool. But that allowed me like a lot of flexibility when I made that transition. So fast forward a little bit, we're in 2020, we're renting in Boston together. And just from all the education we've consumed over, the years prior, we're like, all right, like interest rates are at historic lows. Like if we're going to do it, like this is our time and we're going to house hack our way into it. So that's really how we were able to get started. And then back to Kevin losing his job. If you want to get into that.
So we started building up our portfolio. We house hacked, as Julia said. The first 3 were house hacks, full gut renovations. We used her first-time home buyer on the first one since we were only engaged at the time. And then we were able to use my first-time home buyer on the second one. So we started with a 5% down payment, then a 3% down payment. And then we went into another house hack, putting 15% down, and then a BRRRR. So all this was prior to getting laid off. And right as I was getting laid off, we were closing on that BRRRR. And my company, laid a whole group of us off. It was the safe corporate job. I was there for 8 years, or going on 8 years. Definitely didn't see it coming. There was you hear, voices in the hallways, and there's always the potential for it. But in my specific role, I felt very safe. But no job is safe, as I quickly learned. But thankfully, we had this super strong foundation of these 4 different properties. 2 of them were 2 families. They were all rented and flowing, and those were able to cover our rent, our food, and we weren't stressing, so to speak. Of course, it's not enough to go full-time into real estate quite yet, but it certainly took the stress off of trying to find just any job right away.
Yeah, and that allows you to remove the desperation from your life a little bit too. So even if you don't have the job, you have something coming in that can give you some time, because just taking the next job, and this is what a lot of people do, right? If they don't have the backbone, they don't have 3, 6, 12 months of money saved up, they have to take the next job. They can't put food on the table without doing that. That might put them in a position to take less money, to not go after what they really want to do, and then make them ultimately less happy or miserable. So I love that you went down that path and you were able to talk about the house hacks. It sounds like they were kind of like live-in flips in a way. Maybe you didn't flip them though. You like lived in them and you're fixing them up. And then were you able to then parlay the money, like refinance and put it in the next deal? Like how did that work to go from 0 or 1 to 4?
Yeah, so with the first property, it was a 2-family home. We inherited tenants that fortunately we were shown that they are great tenants, good payment history, all of that. So that really made our living expenses a lot more manageable at the time. We were living in the top floor and, we were also renovating it at the time. So that's how we were able to get into that. And then when we had moved out and then moved into the second property, that was a 3% down, we made sure that, we were able to rent it, fill our place.
Yeah, and just to add to that, to get into that second property, our plan was to do like a cash out refinance, like everyone wants to do. But at the time, it just didn't make sense because we still had a whole 3rd floor that was unfinished. It was just by chance had the opportunity to expand, and we wanted to wait. But anyways, then we got into that second property without cash out refinancing, just from pure saving and using my first time home buyer with only 3% down. So
right. And it also didn't really make sense for us to cash out at that point either, because our interest rate was so low. It was just like, why are we gonna refinance into a higher rate when we have, like how Kevin was saying, that opportunity to add more square footage, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, and just add that extra value.
Yeah.
Did these deals pencil out? I know it's a couple years back. Did they pencil out because rates were so low? Because even putting only 5% down, right? Like that, you could have a pretty, not a great spread depending on, the property you get. So was it a combination of that and also because you had to value add it? What's the back end?
Yeah, they did pencil out, assuming we renovated. Just we were able to raise rents so much, and rents when they sold the house were significantly under market. So it was a bit of both, but yeah, the low rates. I mean, those today are still our best cash flowing properties.
Makes sense. Yeah. And to get some context here, and how does this relate to today's interest rate environment where they're much higher? What I would say is that people think that when you house hack, that you're going to be making money or you're going to be breaking even. And that may be the case. And it may have been the case a few years ago, but you don't have to do it that way. It's like, for example, if you were to go live in an apartment and everyone's complaining about how expensive rents are, let's say you're spending $3,000 a month if you're in a city, or, and that, which is a nice place. You're probably living for $3,000 a month. I don't care what city you're in, maybe not New York City, but if you're spending $3,000 a month, but you can house hack and buy a house, and guess what? You might not be able to find a 2-family. It might be a 3-bed, 2-bath, and you might have to live in one room and rent out the other rooms. And if you're not married or you don't have kids, consider doing it, because here's what could happen. Instead of spending $3,000 a month, you might not be able to break it all the way down to zero. But what if I bought a house for $250,000. That's pretty hard to do now. But if, let's say that house is $400,000, $450,000, what you might be able to do is rent out a room for $1,000 each and turn your $3,000 mortgage into $1,000 that you're spending. Then you're still able to have $2,000 left over that you can go invest, put into the next deal, whatever, put it in the stock market, or just put it away so that you can stack it up. So that's what house hacking looks like now in 2024, in my opinion, even though, I have a 3.1% interest rate too. We have a couple 3% interest rates. I don't think we're going to see that again. So play the game with the cards that you're dealt. And that's kind of what's going on now. I don't know. Do you have something you want to add in?
Yeah, I just actually wanted to ask you this. I know you're in the New England area. Are your properties just outside of Boston? And or explain where they are if you can. You don't have to give us the street names. I know we were joking about that a couple seconds ago, but I think people Boston gets a bad rep of it's so expensive and I can't invest there. And so just curious on how the lay of the land with your portfolio.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, yeah, Boston is expensive, or, the Northeast in general is expensive. So we were in Boston and we looked around, couldn't afford it. The cash flow didn't make sense, even with the low interest rates. So we ended up down in Providence. We were looking everywhere from New Hampshire to more out in Western Mass, and Providence, just the rents were high enough, the property prices were low enough. And even today, when we look around, like there's so many other suburbs or smaller cities around Boston that have, like beyond just Providence, that do have those high rents and low property values or property prices right now. So even though it's not literally our backyard, we were able to stay relatively close, no street to street, be able to drive there when we need to. But yeah, so we ended up moving down to Providence for the last 3 years to do these live-in house flips.
That's awesome. Cool. Just curious, are you guys both, and I forget if we talked about this pre-recording or not, are you both working from home currently, or are you still going to the office? I think we're managing a little bit of W-2s and then the portfolio on the side now.
Yeah, so I'll speak to myself. So I'm working fully remote. Prior to when COVID first hit, my company went fully remote. The company that I ended up getting laid off at, we were fully remote there, and that's what allowed us to go do that. So I would be, in a meeting laying floor and then unmute and say, "Yep, sounds good," and continue laying floor. On certain, meetings that at least allowed me to do that if it was an all team, like all hands meeting kind of thing. But yeah, now I'm currently remote, which is huge. And that was part of the reasons I wanted to make sure I took the right job. I wanted to be remote because that value of driving an hour into work and an hour back, that's 2 hours in the day that I could be looking for properties or doing some property management or, even if it wasn't real estate related, just doing something towards building my future or our future for that matter.
Yeah. And I'll add, I've like I said, I've worked remote like before it was cool. But it gave us a lot of flexibility and the ability to self-manage really well, because at the time when we were living in Providence, we had so much flexibility with us working remote. So I typically handle any inquiries that the tenants, say, like today I got something about the disposal. The sink disposal's making a horrible noise. So that's what I had to deal with today. But
that's a first. That's never happened before.
Yeah. Had to replace my own. I didn't do it myself, but I paid someone during COVID and everything was inflated. I think I spent like over $1,000, maybe like close to
right.
$2,000 for a garbage disposal. Dude. It was
Yeah,
brutal. I feel
Actually,
stupid.
you might
You
have
need to
got-
get
I
a
got
Kevin.
swindled, to be honest. I forget.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to even say that out loud, so it sucks that's on recording now, but whatever.
Jake, keep that in. Don't cut it.
Yeah.
That's great though. So you're self-managing. I'm curious about what these properties bring in for you then, the current portfolio right now, because it had to be enough to allow Kevin to find the right job, right? So we kind of got cut off there, but finish your thought and like I'm curious what the properties bring in, and then we can get into like your future goals and how you want to expand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, with the flexibility of working remote, when you do get those like tenant inquiries and we were living in the area, it was very easy and we were able to provide such good customer service by being like, yep, Kevin will be over in 10 minutes and, be able to get it done. He can run quickly. Lowe's and Home Depot are within a mile of our properties in either direction. So it just made it, very easy at the time. And that's why it was important for us to both stay remote.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then in terms of the current portfolio, so we have, as I think I mentioned earlier, we have two single families and two families. Total the portfolio, so we just actually signed a bunch of leases for June, or renewals, I should call them. So if we're pushing forward a little bit with those little bit of rent raises, we're looking at about 5,400 in cash flow if we're defining cash flow post PTI. So that's not including yard maintenance and water and sewer and things like that, just to make it very clear. So it's nothing that's going to make us crazy rich. We can't live off it for the rest of our lives, but it certainly lowered our risk level, lowered our stress levels. It just, cushioned us that much more. And just to add to that, in terms of the cash flow, like we keep talking about how cash flow is what we want so we can long-term do this full-time. However, the biggest thing we've seen is just the appreciation. So to your point earlier about, today you may not get cash flow or you may not see the same rate, so you may not get the same cash flow as it once was. The appreciation makes our cash flow look like nothing. The appreciation we've gotten on our houses has changed our overall wealth and financial future tremendously. So now that we have that picture, that's how I look at almost every house.
I've talked about this on the podcast before, probably like a year or two ago, but I was saying when you get to a certain point, let's say you guys are kind of close to this, right? You can take a risk on a property in an emerging market or a property that you're seeing that might have some appreciation value. For example, I was buying a property for a short-term rental that I thought was going to break even. And people are like, why would you do that? It's all about the cash flow. It's like, well, I'm buying in an emerging market where right down the street, there's 250 new construction homes. There's 10 new companies moving in, and already within a year, it was, this is all hypothetical. I'm not selling it, but $60,000 in appreciation. Would you trade a break-even cash flow for $60,000 in appreciation? I mean, I would look at it as yes. Now, you can't do that in your first deal if you don't have any money. You got to have the money to back it up. But the point is now you can take the risks where the appreciation really is the play. And that's why it's like we are kind of saying like stay away from the $150,000 properties in Michigan. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't crush it doing that. They 100% can. And we know people that do. And they buy properties that are $100,000. Like Tommy Har comes to mind. He's buying properties and fixing them things up. And, they don't look like they're worth that much. When they're done, they do. He's crushing it. He has like a great system. But we're saying go into a market that you can watch it emerge, especially if you have the backing of even a small portfolio like you do or us to be able to cover you in some downturns. So I think that appreciation play, it's not banking on it, but it's being able to hedge your bet in a downturn too.
There's a blend, I think, overall. And you can to just get in when people, if they don't have a ton of money and they have to buy the 150 to get training wheels. I think we talked about this earlier, like house hacking is basically becoming a landlord and business owner on training wheels, because you're living in one unit, you're kind of managing some of the fixes, you're managing the communication, the relationship. And then when you go buy the next one, you're not living in it at all, depending on the property. And you can fully kind of have a systematized business going. But to your point on the appreciation and the cash flow, like there is a fine line and a balance. It just depends on where the market is, what you currently have for resources. And then, you can kind of tailor it based on your current situation. Maybe that year you're looking for cash flow. Maybe you want X amount of your portfolio to pump X amount of cash flow. The other, you go for the appreciation in the trending market. I think you mentioned it perfectly. Like you can't start there. We didn't start there. You leverage other properties to scale up.
But the point in what I think you guys are doing is you're optimizing the properties that you do have. And that is important. Everyone's like, go buy pieces of shit, go buy 10 more. And then you have all these problems, right? But like you can make a property, one of your properties in an emerging market better. And you can cash flow that property maybe $500, $600, $700, $800, $1,000 a month. Why do that? Why not do that as opposed to trying to go buy 6 assets that cash flow $100 a month? And that's just an example. But I'm assuming, because you throw out a figure there, like $5,400, even if that's not after like all the expenses on a few properties, like that's a big spread. So you were able to force appreciate these things and use that cash flow. $5,400 in cash flow, I guess, maybe let's say it comes out to like $3,500 after. That could take 15 properties on certain areas, right? So the fact that you have it in 4 is pretty impressive. I know we're talking a lot, but I just wanted to mention that there.
Yeah, and of course I'm going to talk again. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Multiply that out by 12. Like you're basically adding another person's salary in there. Like it's like basically 3 people going at your income.
Absolutely.
So I don't want you to undercut that. I think that is a lot of money. And if you talk to someone that has no real estate, they'll be like, whoa, you guys are absolutely killing it. And think about how common it is for these conversations that we all have. And we're like, oh, it's only like $5,400 in cash flow. We only got like 6 units. I'm like, dude, compared to someone else, they're like, you have 6 units or whatever, 4 properties. That's insane. I can't even buy one right now. Like, so I think we just need to do a good job of like highlighting other people that are going and trying this thing and like putting the front foot forward. It's hard. It is not easy. You guys are doing an amazing job. And I really like that you both are aligned on your goals. And I think that allows you to go faster and longer. The last thing I'll say on my rant here, cause I could go a million miles an hour is I'm thinking about like you mentioned like 8 to 10 years into your jobs, right? Think about, and you have, let's call it six properties or 6 units, 4 different properties. There's people that are also 10 years into their job and they have none of that. And they're just like, think of how fast, the reason I bring this up is like, how fast can 10 years go by? It flies. But think about your portfolio in the next 10 years. If you just continue doing what you're doing, not even scaling it up, you're going to naturally scale it up because you're getting better every day. But your portfolio is going to double, triple. You're going to look back in 10 years, another 10 that went just as fast, if not faster than this. And you're going to be having this massive portfolio if you want.
Yeah. So, and not to mention the principal pay down all the tenants are making in the meantime.
It's a very small but mighty is what I'm thinking about it. And it's not going to remain small, but people think about this and we hear episodes or stories of people that have like, oh yeah, I got 100 units. I got this. Like, dude, that's great. How many partners you got in that? And if the fact that it's just you two and you're just going at this, I think you're doing a great job and it's awesome. It's so relatable to people that are similar ages to us. Like you can do it. You just have to get gritty. Not a lot of people are willing to go buy a duplex, live in one unit and the other. Like, oh, I just want my own big house, like to live with just me and my wife or me and my husband and the family. It's like today, you can't it's not the same American dream, if you will, as years prior. The market conditions are different. The economy is different. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. And I don't want to be these guys like, but for some reason my algorithm got me the other day and I'm watching everyone complain about like, oh, but when my grandfather was alive, like he could buy a house for 12 pennies. It's like, dude, if you think that, then that's true, right? Like it's kind of like however you view it is true, right? And I realize it's harder today than it was 5 years ago. It is, but like I don't want to be coming off as like.
I just literally posted a meme today about that.
What do you mean? Did you?
On our page.
Well, it's true.
But it's
there's your algorithm.
I'm like, damn, that's your algorithm, bro.
No, I get what you're saying, but you posted it. It's like, it's funny because the boomers are dancing, but there's people out there that are like up in arms about this. It's
well,
like
and you know what? It's like, yeah, not to cut you off, but like, let's talk about the hard. I mean, we lived in a renovation. If you've never lived in a renovation before, I don't recommend it. But if sometimes you got to do what you got to do because that was our way in. Like, I cried because I was making eggs on a panini maker our first week and it fell on the floor and the floor's disgusting. And I'm like crying, like, what did we get ourselves into? And tell them the story about you laying the last tile in the shower.
Yeah. And we were doing all the work ourselves, to your point about getting gritty and figuring it out. We couldn't afford any contractors. We couldn't afford to pay anyone to do literally anything. So here I am on YouTube figuring out how to lay tile and do a shower and do plumbing and everything. And I finally finished the whole shower and doing all the tile. It's looking great. I go to put the last piece. I want to trim just a tiny bit off. So I take the angle grinder, grind a little bit, and it slips. I slice my finger, cut open, bleeding all over the place.
4th of July in the ER with this one.
Trying to, and it's fine. I mean, I didn't lose a finger or anything.
Yeah, he's fine.
But I come back 2 hours later and the mortar's dry. I'm like, I got to get this done. So I pick up the saw again and start again.
But
Dude,
to your
I thought
point,
you were
like,
saying
it's
all
hard.
felt, not that you'd like to lose a finger by any means, but I thought for some reason, I know the little pegs go in. I don't know what they're called, but like to balance everything out.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me that one tile fell and everything fell off the wall.
Oh,
I don't know what would be worse. Would I take a nick on the finger to just
I would
have
take the
them all
nick.
still be intact? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll take the nick every time.
Totally.
So that's great context here, because I mean, it's not easy, and you have to go through a lot of these bumps and bruises, especially when you're first getting started. I remember my first property, and it was like a rainstorm. I bought this property. I didn't even know you had to fix properties up. I thought you just buy them and they cash flow. Like that's just how it works. So there was this rainstorm, and I'm not kidding, 1 month after I bought my first rental, the tenant calls me and she's like, it's raining in my house. And I'm like, wow. Like I had the most anxiety. I was like, what are you talking about? She sends me a video. I'm not kidding. Rain was pouring through the windows. Like it was like flooding the house. And luckily I had some people in my corner, and I called a friend who was a lawyer, who also was a real estate investor. I had my guy, Chris Philbrick, who was on episode.
Your emotional support over here.
Right. Yeah. And this is before we even had properties together. Right. It was just the first one I bought. And I went over there and I fixed the windows myself. And it was the worst thing I've ever done. I hated it so much. I'll never fix windows again. But the point is like, that's the kind of stuff you do have to deal with to get the appreciation, to get the cash flow, to have the small but mighty portfolio that's going to potentially grow, to give you the financial security. So we're at a position now. I want to hear about what your future goals are with it. Like, what are you looking to get into now? How do you parlay the 6 units into more, or are you comfortable where you're at? Like, what's it look like for you in the future?
Yeah, definitely more. I mean, I guess we've had a few different thoughts here, kind of trying to adapt to the market. I think we were touching on it earlier where the market is getting tougher, but I can either sit here and complain about it or I can figure it out. So trying to figure it out, we were looking at different opportunities to improve our own portfolio, whether it's, putting bedrooms in the basement, like renovating a basement, putting some egress windows and doing it that way, just using what we already have and adding equity that way. We were starting to look at slightly larger, I guess, commercial type units. So nothing crazy, but like maybe 6 to 12, 6 to 15 unit buildings. But that's also getting a little difficult with the rates, and it's very competitive out there. And even just getting mortgages we're finding on those types of properties is even difficult because we want to fix and flip them a little bit. And so it's a big learning experience, and we're still open to that. But more recently, I think our goal has been, all right, we need to raise more cash because although this cash flow is great, it's not enough to buy a property. So we've been looking at some potential flips in the smaller type single family home in the area we already know. So as I mentioned, we're in the Providence area. We know some really good areas that have high potential for high ARVs. So we're looking at those much needed love properties and potentially flipping those. We have the contractors, we have the resources. We've done 3 different flips now, or full gut renovations. So we know what we're looking at and talking about. So that's, I think, the direction we're going.
And I think that specific example is like a good lesson learned for people listening today. It's, tell people what your buy box is and what your criteria is. That flip that Kevin's talking about came from a friend of ours that also invests in our area, but it's his barber's house. They were just chatting in the chair and he said, oh, I want to put my house up for sale. This is the price. And he's like, oh, let me swing this by, Kevin and Julia. So really just saying what you want, putting it out there, and you'll be surprised, things will come to you too. It's not always a hunt.
Yeah, and a relationship can get you a deal bought creatively. You don't have to use the banks, and that's
Exactly.
kind of where we're transitioning our portfolio and our turning our page here for 2024, because the rates are crazy, and if you can do things without having to go through that crazy lending process, it's awesome. And that's where relationships come in, right? This referral for the barber, he'll trust the friend to trust you. You put something together, get a contract, save on fees. It's great. So I think it's important.
Right.
One thing I don't want to forget to mention, I was thinking about it as you guys were talking about, and all the things Corey mentioned, the issues that he had with the roof and the windows and the rainstorm. You guys mentioned the tile story, which I'm sure is one of a million that you've had.
Yeah.
And I've had them all too. And as you're going through and you're starting, everything feels like World War III when it goes down. And you're like, oh my God, because money's tight. You just did this new thing that you're not sure about. You're like, am I cut out for investing? But as you go on in things, you overcome adversity and you get over it. You're like, the big things become smaller things because you're so used to it. You know how to pivot and not make the same mistake again. Then you start having more money and you can outsource things. You're like, oh, I don't care. It's not my time and energy going into that anymore. I'd rather pay someone to do it so I can go do the big dollar things, focus on the next property, the next acquisition, the next relationship to get me 3 more deals because they own property, right? I can only say that from experience now. We're about 4 years in. We've tried almost everything under the moon. It feels like not really. There's a million things, but from house hacking to buying own primary residences to having duplexes that burn down to having the crazy tenants, random stuff happening. And it thinks. I remember him when I said emotional support. I remember when he first got his property, he was calling me like, "Dude, you're not gonna believe what happened. This sucks." I'm like, "Dude, if that happened to me, that'd be horrible." And then we get into one together and those things started happening. It does. And they all happened just in different variables. We luckily had each other to go off of, but money was tight. And we were like, oh, it felt like the end of the world. And I'm just saying, fast forward, and we talked about time, and it seems to fly, right? As long as you can have that support system or the mental fortitude yourself to get over things and realize it's just today you're feeling this, go to sleep, wake up, adapt, move forward. There's people that have done this before you. There are solves. You just can't give up and you'll be in a good spot. So I wanted to bring that up. I think you guys are absolutely killing it. And it's awesome to see a couple doing this because usually it's one person that is motivated for it and the other person, there's a little friction or not sure. When you're on the same page and you have these open money talks and talk about your future goals, what you're looking for, it's hard to fail. It is. So your story is incredible. So thanks for coming on today, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to talk about as we wind down the show before we get to your personal why, is I actually believe that having your W-2 jobs, I don't know how long you want to keep them for, but I do think it's a little bit of a superpower that you have right now. And I'll explain why. I think this might be, I don't know if it's controversial, but people may not agree. I think that there's a lot of people out there who, when you just have your W-2 job, the mental energy and the fortitude that it takes for you to build a portfolio or another business on the outside actually in a way tells your employer, holy shit, they may not know, but you actually can balance both and be effective in both areas. Whereas if you're just going to your W-2 job, you're kind of punching the clock and you might go home and watch Netflix after, you have a little bit of a lazier attitude and you might not be efficient at work. You might just be in there just doing whatever you want to do on Instagram, whatever. So for me and our W-2 jobs, I don't know how much awareness there is around what we do, but I think we're both really good at it and they know that and they don't really ask too many questions about what we're doing on the outside because it's our schedules are we have it tight, and I don't know if that's the same way for you guys. I'm curious, do you want to keep your jobs as long as you can to get loans? Just paint that picture for me because it's relatable, I think.
That last part of what you just said, I feel like a lot of people rush out of their W-2 job and realize it's so much easier to get a mortgage on a rental property with your W-2 job. So everyone needs to kind of, keep that in the back of their mind before they decide to quit. But no, we would love to be in real estate full time. We're trying to get there as fast as we can. And I think Q1 of this year, we had a conversation. We said, listen, we really have to change our strategy in order to get where we want to go faster. And that was a big push for, okay, let's look at a 6+ unit let's look at maybe a flip to use those funds to fund a bigger property. Let's consider equity partners. We've been having a lot more conversations about how we're going to scale. But yeah, I'm speaking for both of us. We would love to just do real estate full time.
Yeah, but it's being, to your point, careful, like not just rushing out of your W-2. I think it's classic on Instagram and the algorithm, as you were talking earlier, so many people are on the beach, saying quit your W-2 and, you just pay a someone else to manage your properties. This is all you got to do. And it's just not that simple. Like we've throughout this episode been talking, things pop up. It's expensive. I mean, not to mention just your own healthcare is expensive. Your just random life expenses. You need car maintenance. And then of course you don't want to just be living off $4,500 the rest of your life. Life is going to get more expensive, of course. So we strongly recognize that the value that our W-2s are bringing, that we're not trying to rush away from or run away from them by any means. We both like what we do. We enjoy what we do. I love being an engineer still. But it's definitely that long-term picture. If we can keep working towards that, like being able to go to work, but not having to go to work, if that makes sense. You're choosing to go, not being required to go because you need the money.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation because everyone's different, and there's no cookie cutter way to answer this. Depends on what your benefits are, depends on how much you're making, depends on how much flexibility you have. Are you work from home? Are you hybrid? Are you full time? How's your mental health when you get home? Do you have like any capacity to do anything else?
Yeah,
there's variables to this, and they change based on the year too. And like you can forecast as much as you want, but I think kind of talking to Corey's point is like to being able to balance it and go hard at two things. Imagine when one's lifted, like the W-2, like when you don't need the money anymore, you guys have that safety net of whatever that number is, right? And you're like, whoa, we can do this full time. Could you imagine what you can do in 8 hours, what you're typically doing in maybe like 2 when you're faded from your job when you get home and you're like, oh my God, like I'm trying, you're giving most of the energy that you can. And even working remote though, like you're shutting your brain off from your W-2 to then turn it on to real estate, unless they're the same thing. And then the same, like, I don't know, maybe you're like a realtor, for example, right? And you're in the same business and can think real estate every day. It's a hard thing to do when you have a bunch of tasks for one business here, then you got your W-2, then you got a different business here. And you're like, how the heck do I like turn one on, turn one off without wigging myself out? So it's a tough balance. And I agree. I think W-2s provide a lot more benefit than they don't. I will say even for income and like tax write-offs and things like having a W-2 helps in a lot of ways in conjunction while having a rental portfolio. So
definitely.
Yeah.
I want to get to, as we wind down here, maybe some your why. Like what's the purpose behind doing this? It's nice to have money. We need it to survive. Everyone needs it. It's nice to have more. But then it's nice to have more after that and after that and after that. So it's got to be more than that, I would think. And it sounds like that's probably the case for you too. So what's the reason you do all of it? Like, what's the purpose? What gets you out of bed every morning?
Sure. I mean, I think for us, we got married a year and a half ago, and we just want to live like the best life we possibly can together, and eventually, hopefully in the near future with children, and be able to give them the best life that they possibly can too, and hopefully hand something down to them that's very passive, at that point, so they can have the freedom and ability to do whatever they want to do. So I think that's something that drives me. And I also would love to be at a point like where I could be home and be like a really present mom and not have to rely on my W-2, and I can solely manage the properties. So that's something that I really look forward to.
Yeah. And for me, overall, just the freedom. As I mentioned, when I got laid off, we weren't rushing to just take any job. So, I took some time just to, both of us at the time, Julie was laid off as well. So we both were just enjoying the day, being able just to go for walks midday, go to, a brewery or something and just enjoying our time, I think that was a big thing. Yeah, I'm sure there's a million reasons why I would love...
It's the freedom of time.
Yeah, it's the
just
time.
Being able to go to the gym in the middle of the day or to the dog park. We enjoyed doing that with our dog Wags. it's once you have like a taste of that freedom of time, it's like you just want more of it.
And not wanting, like, a big thing for me is not being so reliant on another job. Like, that W-2 can go away just like that. And when you start thinking about what a job is, it's like your whole life is surrounded by your one manager or your one company. It's like they control you, or they could control you, you know? I mean, even if you have the best job in the world, that's the reality of what a job is. So if you can build that independent fund, again, it's, you can show up to work and enjoy what you do, but you're not showing up because you have to. You're showing up because you want to.
I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people right now, actually 90% of the world, I would say, or at least in the States, you're building your life around your job, and to flip it and be able to build your job around your life that's the ideal, right? Like, here's what I want to do. Obviously, I know I need to still be some, like, in the working force or providing value to society, right? Like, if you will. But when I think a lot of people got a taste of it during COVID, and we were like, some people just got laid off, or they were still making money, but they didn't have to go to meetings or whatever. It was 100% remote. The world was in a weird place. And they're like, wow, like, now I can do the things that I've wanted to do and like start exploring passions. And like, for us, you know, that was getting into entrepreneurship a little bit. And it's just such an interesting feeling of going like that, and then having the feeling of like, we got to go back. And then some people are like, nah, not going back. And they're, you know, it's interesting. Some people went back with no job, decided not to go back and didn't get another job. Then there's other people that went back and they're hybrid, they're working on a portfolio. Then there's others that just went all in on real estate right away, and they had savings. Like, it gave me the feeling, at least I was like, wow, you can do this. And like, life still goes on outside of the four walls at work. And you're right. Like, it revolves around a manager, the paycheck and the things. And you're like, I just can't, my identity was becoming like pulled into that so much. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's like, I'm kind of taking that back a little bit, slowly by slowly, if that makes sense. But, I did want to mention too, you guys are on the path to having a family, and I started one recently as well. Obviously been married for a while, but when you have a kid, it just changes the ballgame. And to have things set up beforehand, you're doing the right thing. That's all I'll say. There's so much to unpack there. I know we're at the end of the show, but you're going to feel so much better. All the work you guys just put in whenever that time happens, because then you can put as much time and energy and effort into your baby as you want. And it's the coolest thing ever. You like real estate. Imagine something you have to keep alive every day, and they you. It's the coolest thing. Very, very hard. And so
that's how
managing it all is adding a baby on top of that, or a human, I should say, is like, it's almost unfathomable, but you know how you have adapted to find time for real estate while managing your job. You also find time to raise the family too. And it's weird. You just keep expanding. It's interesting what the human body and brain can do. So, I just wanted to touch on that, because I know there's people out there that have families and they're listening, like, maybe they're not in real estate yet, and they're like, I could never do that. Like, I have no time right now. You just have to siphon it off and really defend it. And, you know, maybe you're going to have to get up even earlier and sacrifice sleeping. And like, it's very hard. And there's no right way to say it. But I think being that you mentioned that, I wanted to say, like, from the guy that is also doing that, it's possible. But I'm thanking myself 5 years ago that I started when I did, because to be financially stable and have things, not have to worry about money and like the friction there between the relationship what that could bring, while also juggling, raising a child, it would be crazy. So you're on the right path. You're killing it. And I just wanted to touch on that.
Well, and choose your hard. Like, life is hard. So it could either be hard and you have to juggle, you know, your personal life and your job and all the things, or, you know, you can be creating wealth in the process, and it's hard too. So
100%.
You can do more than what you think you can. I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to the last question then. So there's we've had couples on the show before, but oftentimes our conversation, or even if we haven't had the couple, we've had one of the two on, and the question is, yeah, well, I got to go convince my husband, or I got to go convince my wife, or it's, you know, getting the other person who's kind of not living their own life, but has their own ideals, getting them on board with building financial freedom. I'm wondering if you have one piece of advice for other couples out there. Maybe you both were it was both innate within you, and you didn't need to convince each other or anything, but I'm curious, what's one piece of advice to help do this together that can get maybe people on the same page who are looking for that outlet to say, well, I could do this, but I got to convince the other person?
Yeah, I would go into it with the mindset of not every decision is going to be 50-50, meaning whenever we do a renovation, or Kevin specifically is vetting a contractor, or if he's saying, hey, Julia, this floor, that, whatever, I'll give my opinion, and I trust that he'll, take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, that's his lane and his area of expertise. So I'm not going to question his judgment. I'm going to trust that he did the research, he price matched everything, and that engineering brain, they do that naturally anyway. But yeah, that's his say. And then when it comes to the tenant management side of things, he trusts me and my judgment and what I'm saying to the tenants. So I think just defining your roles and knowing when to give the other person the final say.
Yeah. And for me, in terms of getting your spouse on board, I mean, for us personally, I don't think we had that issue. We both, mainly because we both were future looking, we both, for our own individual selves, wanted to set ourselves up in the best position. And then when we got married, it was just doing the same vision together. But I mean, looking back at whether it's my work and managing people, or trying to get her on board with a new flip or something, it's, I think, explaining the why. Like we talked about, what's our why? I think if you can explain to your spouse, like, yeah, it's not the sexiest thing to do right now. I know we'd rather go on vacation or something, but think about down the road when we have a kid, and we want to have that financial security, and there could be a point where we could both leave our jobs and, live together. Like, and maybe that's not your why, or that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is smaller or bigger, but if you both can see the vision in 10 years of what that looks like, and that's where you both want to go, then great. I think that it's easier to get someone on board knowing what the future holds.
Great answer. So first of all, we want to thank you for coming on. This has been awesome to get to know both of you. Ryan, you guys have the connection of New England, which is cool. And we like following your story. We're just humbled that you've been listening to us for as long as you have. It sounds like since close to the beginning. And it's always cool to connect with people who have been doing that. And it comes full circle. You're on Bigger Pockets. We're having you on here. And I can just see that your journey's growing, and it's awesome to see. So if people want to learn more about you, maybe follow your journey, or who knows where the connections can come from. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah. Our Instagram is Lux, Lux Living RI. Or you could type in our names, Julia and Kevin Windheuser, and find it there. But yeah, we post a lot of like our renovation tips, pictures of the before and after. Those are my favorites to post. Anytime we just come across something interesting, we try to repost it.
And we also have a renovation PDF on there of just like our go-to like flooring, cabinets, and things that we use, which is also helpful.
Yeah, all free. I mean, these are just tools we use for ourselves, and honestly, just so I don't lose them, I just put them on a PDF and put it out there for everyone. I figure I can't lose it that way. So,
that's right.
And get feedback from other people. So, yeah,
cool. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. This has been awesome, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is awesome. Like I said, we've been listening for super long time, and hope we gave something back to the community.
You definitely did. Thank you guys so much. This was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.